Hello, everyone. This is the Berean Challenge Persecution Prayer List for February 13th through 19th, 2022. Our first story comes from China. It was posted on February 14th by International Christian Concern. Christian activist Zhang Zhan, who was arrested and incarcerated in 2020 for exposing the failures of the Wuhan government's early responses to the COVID-19 outbreak, is finally in better health, according to her mother. Last summer, Zhang's health was extremely poor, as she had lost a significant amount of weight and suffered from severe malnutrition, a gastric ulcer, and swollen legs and feet. She did not have the strength to stand on her own and had to be sent to the hospital a few times. 3 days before the Lunar New Year, which was on January 28th, Zhang's mother got to talk to her through a video chat. Her daughter was visibly better than months ago. The activist can now walk on her own and sometimes works on crafts along with other inmates. Her mother and supporters are relieved after knowing Zhang is doing better in prison. Zhang was sentenced to 4 years on charges of picking quarrels and provoking trouble in December 2020 by a court in Shanghai. As a citizen journalist, her bravery has won her several awards, such as the 2020 Lin Zhao Free Award by China Aid and the 2021 Press Freedom Award by Reporters Without Borders. Our next story is also from China and was also posted on February 14th by Morning Star News. China's Communist Party is imposing an oppressive new measure that will isolate Christians by prohibiting unregistered house churches from the online gatherings and teachings that have sustained them through the COVID-19 pandemic. Under the new regulation, which comes into effect on March 1st, only those religious organizations which have government permission will be able to gather or disseminate religious information online. The requisite permits will only be granted to the 5 regime-approved religious organizations of the Three Self-Patriotic Movement, which represents the officially approved Protestant churches of China, the Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association, and the officially recognized organizations of Buddhism, Islam, and Taoism. Explaining the policy, the Chinese state-run Global Times reported, online religious content that incites subversion of state power, violates the principle of independence and self-management in religious undertakings, or induces minors to believe in religion are prohibited. The measure is a violation of China's own constitution and will directly impact an estimated 100 million Chinese unregistered house church Christians. Another story from China posted on February 17th by Church in Chains. On February 11th, 2022, a Cheng District Court sentenced Pastor Hao Jiwei of Ngangkuo Church in Ezhou City, Hubei Province, to 8 years in prison for fraud. Her lawyer, Si Weizhang, visited her in prison, stating she has decided to appeal. The pastor has been in detention since July 2019, when she was initially charged with fraud for collecting tithes and offerings from her house church members. She was the first of many house church pastors to be charged with fraud. Originally a registered pastor in the officially recognized Three Self-Patriotic Movement, Pastor Hao left the Three Self Church because she disagreed with the Religion Bureau's governance of churches. She and the house church she leads have been subjected to ongoing persecution by the authorities, and in August 2019, Chinese Communist Party officials demolished their church building. Pastor Hao's husband, Zhang Yuwu, died of liver cancer in 2018, and following the pastor's imprisonment, her older son Paul, who is 18, took care of her younger son Moses, who's now 14, until Paul went away to university at Zhejiang Province. Moses is now being cared for by a part-time domestic helper and some women from the church, and is reportedly suffering from severe depression. Our next story comes from India and was reported on February 14th by International Christian Concern. On January 31st, 2022, radical nationalists forced 40 Christians to reconvert to Hinduism in Puldavidi village, Jabua district, Madhya Pradesh state. Members of Shalom Kalisha Church in Jabua district were threatened with dire consequences by the Hindu hardliners if they refused to take part in the reconversion program. Leaders of two right-wing national groups, VHP and Bajrang Dal, held a reconversion ceremony at a Hindu temple in the village where the 40 Christians were forced to take part in the rituals of breaking the coconut and eating food offered to gods. The targeted campaign of reconversion is part of the extremist goal to make Jabua a conversion-free district. Anandi Ben and her family became Christians more than 4 years ago and were among the group of Christians who were forcibly reconverted. Anandi told International Christian Concern, "No one can take away the faith that is inside of our heart. We hope to join the church again soon. God will help us. I was threatened that I will lose government subsidies and affirmative benefits if I continue as a Christian. I was also threatened that my agricultural land will be taken away from me. I had no choice." Our next story, which was posted on February 15th, comes from Pakistan and was posted by the British Asian Christian Association. On February 13th at 9 p.m., a gang of 4 Muslim men entered a games arcade room owned by Pervaiz Masih, a 32-year-old Christian man, which is frequented mainly by Christians. Even though it is illegal for Muslims to drink alcohol in Pakistan, the Muslim men were drunk when they entered the arcade and began being disruptive. The men hurled abuse at the Christians and then muscled in on a game being played by a group of 3 Christian young men. The Muslim gang began to fight the smaller group of Christians, and when the Christians were winning, one of the Muslim men shouted out to other Muslims to join them. In a matter of minutes, over 20 additional Muslim men joined the melee and beat the Christian men. Sobil Masih, 22 years, Yeshua Masih, 23 years, and Amus Masih, 23 years, were seriously injured and were taken to General Hospital Lahore for treatment by relatives. Police noticed the injuries on the men when they arrived at the hospital in a bloody state and interviewed the Christians about what had happened. Police then obtained the medico-legal certificate of Sobil Masih from the hospital, which was utilized in registering a first incident report and an investigation against the culprits. The next day, Pervaiz Masih was upstairs in his flat above his shop eating his breakfast when he heard a commotion below. He climbed downstairs to see what was going on, and as soon as he came down, the Muslim gang started hurling abuse at him and the Christian community. Pervaiz simply asked the mob members not to use such foul language before women and children. At this, Raja Yusuf, who seems to be a leader of the group of 4 Muslim men that instigated the first attack, shouted out, "Today we will not let you live for speaking against Muslims. You do not have the right to even wash our feet." 2 men then grabbed Pervaiz Masih's arms and held them tightly to his sides, while another man, armed with a pistol, began firing it in the air to keep the other Christians away. Then a 4th man hit the back of Pervaiz Masih's head with a brick, knocking him immediately unconscious. Pervaiz Masih crashed to the ground as the Muslim men holding his arms released them. After seeing that Pervaiz was no longer moving, the Muslim gang scattered away quickly. Pervaiz's sister, Rebecca, came down with her mother and started screaming for help. Rebecca's son, Ashish, who's 15 years old, rushed over after being told his uncle was bleeding and laying on the street. With the help of other local people, Rebecca and Ashish placed Pervaiz in a rickshaw and took him to Ittifaq Hospital. Once there, however, the sister and nephew were advised that Pervaiz was dead on arrival. Pervaiz Masih was the only brother of 7 sisters. He was also the only breadwinner for the family and supported 2 disabled sisters. His community was outspoken of his commitment to his church, which he attended regularly and volunteered to help clean and maintain. Our next story is also from Pakistan. It was posted on February 16th by International Christian Concern. A Christian man was stabbed to death earlier this week in Lahore, Pakistan. A mob of radical Muslims attacked the 25-year-old Christian during a dispute about the construction of a wall in the neighborhood factory area. The victim's brother was injured the day before, as the local Christian and Muslim communities had clashed over the same issue. The victim's uncle filed a first incident report with the police. According to him, a mob of 200 people had gathered in the street near his house, yelling, cursing, and creating chaos in the street. Despite the sensitivity of the issue, police said they were unable to dedicate the proper amount of time and effort to the case because of their focus on the Pakistan Super League soccer matches. The police claimed they needed to focus all their attention on security at the games. This incident further highlights how inconsequential violence against Christians is in Pakistan. Our next story is from Uganda, and it was posted on February 16th by Morning Star News. On February 6th, Muslim relatives of a Christian evangelist beat and tied him up to be burned to death after he returned home for a funeral in eastern Uganda. Malingumu Bruhan, age 34, returned to Kaliro district for his grandfather's funeral in Muhira village, Nawaikoki, and then accepted his uncle's request to stay and visit because they said they had not seen him for a long time. My uncles accused me of embarrassing them by holding Christian evangelistic open-air meetings and debates with Muslims, Bruhan told Morning Star News. They accused me of being an infidel by converting to Christianity, and that Allah will reward them in Jannah, the garden paradise, if they killed me. Bruhan said he remained quiet, but his uncle said, Now is the right time for me to receive punishment from Allah, whereby I was going to be burned alive, and the birds of the air will enjoy me as their meat. As Bruhan continued keeping silent, his uncle's anger grew, he said. They started beating me up as others gathered firewood, while another was sent to go for petrol because they wanted to use it to burn me alive, Bruhan said. As his uncles were waiting for fuel, another Christian convert from Islam who had accompanied Bruhan to the funeral came looking for him, but was told he was nowhere in the vicinity. The friend spied Bruhan's shoe, which had come off when his uncles dragged him off for slaughter, Bruhan said. My friend made several phone calls after finding my shoe, and other friends arrived and started searching for me, he said. They found me behind the house about 100 meters away, tied and with firewood around me. They tried calling the police, which scattered the attackers, who then fled. Having sustained head injuries, Bruhan was taken to a clinic at Bulumba town and was later transferred to another area undisclosed for security reasons. Malingumu Bruhan is a well-known evangelist in Mbali, Ngaga, Jinja, and Kampala for his public debates with Muslims about Christianity and Islam. He has survived 11 murder attempts. By God's grace, I overcame the Muslims' planned attacks, Bruhan said. Our next story is from Nigeria. It was posted on February 17th by International Christian Concern. Fulani militants killed one person and burned down more than 45 homes in Zemandabo, a village in the Nigerian state of Kaduna, on February 8th. Survivor Justice Hillary told International Christian Concern the Fulani militants came in around 2:30 a.m. The village guards were outside doing patrol, trying to secure their environment, and then they heard gunshots from their boundaries. All our houses were burnt, and our church was destroyed. Timothy Ishaya owned a store in the village that was targeted by the militants. During the attack, they raided his goods before lighting the building on fire. They broke through my door and looted plenty of things, and then set the rest ablaze, he said. They also went around and burnt all the rooms, including the storage where I kept food items and other valuables. He said they were speaking the Fulani language as they ransacked his store. Another survivor who requested anonymity said we were outnumbered. We didn't prepare for war. We do not have the kind of weapons they have, as we are peace-loving and accommodative people. When we heard the gunshots, we had to start evacuating the women and the children instead of fighting back. We knew we can't stand against them. Government soldiers arrived after most of the damage was done. They repelled the attack but refused to go after the militants. The anonymous survivor added, "The government has not done anything to help us. The Fulani militants said they will come back, but we have not seen soldiers put in place to protect us. Now the whole village is deserted, lonely, and quiet. Domestic animals are starving as there's no one to look after them. This is very sad and inhumane. Nigerian Christians have long suffered at the hands of militants who attack Christian communities with little fear of a government response. Kaduna is a particularly dangerous place for Christians. The governor of Kaduna State, Nasir al-Rufai, is extremely hostile to Christian communities and has consistently endangered them during his time as governor." Our next story, also from Nigeria, was posted on February 19th by International Christian Concern. Today marks the 4th year anniversary of the adoption of Leah Sharibu, a Nigerian schoolgirl who was just 14 when she was kidnapped by the Boko Haram terrorist group. She is the only child to still be held from that kidnapping and continues to be held captive because she refuses to renounce her Christian faith, according to multiple former Boko Haram prisoners who had contact with her. Leah, who turns 19 on May 14, seems to have been married off to one of her abductors and is rumored to have 2 children, though hard evidence of her current state is difficult to come by because she is not allowed any contact with her family. The only news comes from survivors of Boko Haram who have either escaped or been released. On February 19, 2018 at 5:30 p.m., Boko Haram kidnapped 110 schoolgirls from the Government Girls Science and Technical College located in northeast Nigeria. After a month of negotiations between the Nigerian government and Boko Haram, 104 of the 105 girls left alive were released from captivity and returned home to their families, leaving Leah alone in captivity. Leah's case has been the subject of worldwide outrage and helps to illustrate the way Islamist terrorism impacts Christian communities in Nigeria. The Nigerian government, though outwardly sympathetic to Leah's situation, has seemed to do little to rescue her. The international community must continue to champion Leah's cause and demand that she be released. It must also pressure the Nigerian government to take a more active role in defending innocent Christians in the Middle Belt and northern parts of Nigeria. Please continue to pray for Leah Sharibu and her family, including her 2 young children. Pray that the Lord will grant wisdom to President Muhammadu Buhari and the Nigerian government. Pray that Leah will be released and that the Lord will ease the burdens of the trauma that she and her family have experienced. Pray for the healing of Nigeria, for the end of mass abductions and killings, and for the Lord to transform the hearts of those who persecute the church. Our last story comes from Canada. It was posted on February 17th by Worthy News. A prominent Poland-born pastor has been denied bail as Canadian authorities appear increasingly worried about his opposition to coronavirus restrictions. Street church pastor Artur Pawlowski from Calgary in Alberta province poses too much of a security threat to Canadian society and has denied him bail, the provincial court said. His preaching of the gospel of Jesus Christ and feeding the poor was judged as being in the fall of civilization, trial observers claimed. This is the end of this week's Persecution Prayer List.